Welcome back to Behind the Visor. Free safety Stavros Katsantonis here, and it's a new week in the CFL offseason. January is kind of known as one of those slow months, but this is one of those weeks where the news actually matters, and we've got winter meetings direction, we've got a real money week update, and there's a playoff format debate that's blowing up with fans that I want to respond to, kind of give my player take into that as well. And before we get to the quick hits, we'll run through the season recap stretch, the Edmonton win, the Winnipeg travel road loss, the Toronto 3-pick game, the Calgary wake-up call, and the final win versus Ottawa that sealed the East Final for us at home. But before we get into that, which lane do you want to see most this offseason? We obviously have money, we got rules, we got playoffs, free agency, scheduling. There's so many lanes that we can get into, so make sure to leave a comment on what you want to see in future breakdowns. But we got the big picture first. Let's get straight into it. The winter meetings vibe check. Winter meetings have always given you that sense of what the league is emphasizing. And the message has been consistent. Evolve the product. Keep it Canadian. Keep the identity. So I think when leadership kind of says modernize, which was kind of a word that, was floated around during the league meetings, I personally kind of hear clarity, pace, consistency, and, just the moving forward of the CFL game, which I think is what we all want at the end of the day. We want the best possible version of the game that relates with the times that we're in today. And, there's so much new things that are going on with, you got AI out there, you got social media taking off, just things at an all-time high. And we want to make sure that obviously the league is staying consistent with that sort of stuff. And that's not kind of the direction that the commissioner is going with there. And I'm excited to see, where the league goes. But I think, when you hear modernize, what do you want that to mean? Do you want it to mean pace? Do you want it to mean broadcast, rules clarity, the fan experience? I mean, those are just a few of the things that I think fans want to know about, right, at the end of the day. And what part, this is the biggest, right? What part of the CFL do you think should never be touched or changed from an identity standpoint, right? We got obviously the 3 downs, the ratio, the motion, the field, which will be changing in 2027 with the shortening to 100 yards, but everything else will kind of be the same aside from the end zones being, 15 yards, the goalposts being moved out of those. But, what do you think should never change moving forward? Now let's get into the part that changes the chessboard. We got some kind of breaking news on the CFLPA and CFL league standpoint, but the CFLPA received the league's defined revenue estimate and the revenue share amount, and the plan is to have that allocation decision done very, very soon. The baseline minimum salary cap for the 2026 season is supposed to be $6.062 million per team. Does the cap clarity get you more excited with free agency or the draft? And from a team building standpoint, are you more focused on star power building or the depth of a team? And now here's what's new today, like literally breaking. I got confirmation from the CFLPA that they received the league's increased revenue rundown, and it points to a $218,000 cap increase per team for the 2026 season on top of the $6.062 million baseline. So basically you're taking roughly a $6.28 million increase per team on the working salary cap for the 2026 year. So that's great to hear from a player standpoint. I'm sure from a league standpoint that the teams are allowed to spend, a little bit more money with the free agency window coming on February 1st and free agency opening very shortly after that. So, $218K doesn't mean you necessarily rebuild your roster. It usually means you keep a core piece, win one competitive bid, or upgrade depth in a way that shows up in November. Now, if your team has an extra $218K, where should it go first? Should it go to a Canadian starter, O-line or D-line depth? The secondary maybe, special teams, linebacker. You can go across the board at, what your team specifically needs, but let me know what you think your team should spend that $218K on, and we'll get to the bottom of where teams are going to spend it. But would you rather use cap room to keep the core or swing big on a huge free agency addition in 2026? Now, there's the fan conversation that's actually fun and worth debating. We have playoff formats debate, which is kind of something that popped off on social media, Reddit CFL, and there's a thread on Reddit CFL right now that's basically what if the playoff formats changed. And it's one of those topics where fans actually have really creative ideas. The post lays out multiple what if formats like current format with divisions, current format without divisions, NFL conference style, and an old final series style concept. So, I mean, we may as well just throw those up on the screen right now. Let's kind of go through, I guess, what each one holds and where I feel like, we could have some fun in terms of moving forward if any of these actually ever did come to fruition. But obviously, first off, we have the current CFL format, which is obviously East and West divisions, 6 teams, 5 games over 3 weeks, all based off seeding with the potential crossover if the 4th team in the East or West has a better record than the 3rd team in the East or West, which we saw obviously this past offseason with Winnipeg crossing over and the ultimate way the playoffs played out in that format. So we don't got to spend too much time on that one. But here's another one that I think is kind of interesting. You have the non-divisional format, which again is 6 teams, 5 games over 3 weeks. And it's all seed-based. So you have 1 home game for highest seeds for quarter and semifinals. So that's, your traditional, I guess, 1 through 6 playoff seeding where 1 and 2 get a bye. You have 4 and 5 play each other. 6 and 3 play each other. Obviously, the home game goes to the highest seed rankings. And then it proceeds from there. So that would be honestly a cool one to see if the CFL ever implemented that. Like I don't think I'd personally have a problem, but getting rid of the divisions, I don't know. It's a tough thing to see when obviously the only thing you've known is playing East and West divisions. But with 9 teams, I know it always makes it difficult from a playoff standpoint, but that would be an interesting one to see because every single game would matter. It wouldn't just be, we're only worried about our divisional games down the stretch. We got to win the non-divisional game so we can get into the playoffs, right? And I think right now it does mean that. For the most part, obviously the start of the season, you want to win as many games as you can. And then as you get into that backstretch, those divisional games, that's usually where, the schedule has them laid out. Those are the ones that are the most important because they determine your playoff seeding in the East. So this would be a cool one moving forward if that ever did come, within the league. Because obviously the league has been talking about, maybe looking at a different playoff format going forward. So there's that one. We have this is the NFL conference format, which is obviously the most kind of relevant one for, our American viewers who watch the game today. But basically it's 7 teams, 6 games, 3 weeks. So you'd have 2 home games available for the highest reseed and 1 home game for remaining highest seeds. Again, another interesting one where again, you kind of, you lose, I guess, the divisional aspect of it, but you have 7 teams make the playoff, which in a 9-team league would kind of be interesting where, hey, you could have a losing record and make the playoffs. But I mean, it's kind of like that now in the East Division where you can't have a losing record and make the playoffs. But I think this would kind of open it up a little bit more. Like imagine 7-11 team winning the Grey Cup, if they happen to get hot at the right time and go on a run, right? I mean, that would be interesting. So this one is cool, but I don't know if I would totally agree with adopting this one. This was one of the ones that actually kind of sparked my interest was the AFL Final Series format. And again, we want to actually give a shout out to CFL Stats Geek for actually making all these and coming up with these ideas, or else we wouldn't have this content to talk about. So appreciate you, CFL Stats Geek, for sharing this info with us across social media and getting this topic trending. But this would kind of be a 6-team format where you'd have 6 teams, 7 games over 4 weeks, 2 home games available for the first seed and 1 home game for the remaining high seeds, and a match D winner, which could be the second home game for the second team. So this one, let me just break this down for you a little bit simpler, because even for me, initially reading this, I was like, okay, I can't comprehend all these lines going in different places. But for me, the way I understood it was obviously you have your high seeds, right? So you have your first seed in this past year. These are all given off of how last year ended with the 2025 season. But you got Sask as the first seed high, right? So this will be the qualifying final. And the TiCats, us, as the second seed. So they play each other. Let's say Sask, quote unquote, won that game. They would automatically go into the semifinals. They'd have a home game because they're the high seed. They won the game. The TiCats, our team, would go into another semifinal game that would be played by winners of the elimination final. So those elimination final games would consist of the 5th seed and the 4th seed playing each other, which last year was Calgary and Winnipeg. And then the 3rd seed high versus the 6th seed, which would be BC and Montreal. So basically, let's say for all intents and purposes, Calgary beats Winnipeg. Montreal beats BC. Okay, so Calgary would move on. They would go on to play, I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, which I might not be, so bear with me here. But I want to say that the elimination finals would go to the semifinals. So Montreal would go to Hamilton, kind of how it already happened. They'd play Hamilton, right? Winner of that game would go to the preliminary final, right? And the Calgary team, who won in the elimination finals, stay with me here because I know we're looping all over the place, would go and play versus Saskatchewan in the semifinals, okay? So from there, let's say Sask beats Calgary, they automatically earn the Grey Cup, right? Because they were the first seed. That's the main game. They only got to play 2 games to get into the Grey Cup, which is, you're the first seed. You basically, I'm sure a bye would get thrown in there at some point. And then from the TiCats and Montreal game, obviously Montreal ended up winning that game, they would go to the preliminary final. They would play Calgary. And since Calgary played the number 1 seed, they would get kind of like a rebirth and be able to potentially go to the Grey Cup. I don't know how much of this one I like, because again, you're rewarding teams that lose in the playoffs when the stakes are supposed to be the highest. You're not supposed to get a second chance per se. So while this one does seem interesting, and it does provide a absolutely Inception style playoff format where you really have to, kind of crunch. Again, it's probably way easier if you actually look at it and, really look at the finer details of how this is laid out. It's a cool format. I think it could work great in the CFL. However, I don't know if I like rewarding teams that lose playoff games and allowing you to have sort of the second chance to continue on. So that's that one. Again, another cool one. And this is the final one. I don't disagree with this one. I think this one is cool. It's the round robin format, and you've seen round robin across all sports, all playoffs. And this one is kind of cool. It's division. It keeps the divisions, which I think we kind of need to keep the divisions. I think that keeps the rivalries fresh, keeps that, that just the ingenuity of the CFL at the end of the day, East and West. I mean, it's always been that in all sports. I mean, you can go back across, anything. There's always a division that you have to get out of, right? So the round robin, this is 6 teams, 5 to 7 games, 4 weeks, 1 guaranteed home game for the 1 and 2 seeds from each division, 1 additional home game for the first seed if game 3 is played, a tiebreaker situation that goes to point differential, meaning every point counts in every single game. If the third seed wins, this is actually a cool one, so listen up to this one. If the third seed wins games 1 and 2, if the third seed wins games 1 and 2, then they automatically win the round, and game 3 becomes unnecessary. So they go straight to the Grey Cup from there. So let's kind of break this down so you guys can kind of understand that these are just straight random made up possibilities right here. Okay, so this is how I kind of broke them down, how I interpreted it. But let's start out in the West Division, right? So you have game 1, week 1. BC's playing Calgary, right? BC was the higher seed in this past season, so they play Calgary. Let's say BC won that game by a score of 30-27, so a three point differential difference. Week 2 would have Calgary, third seed crossover, right? Playing the first seed high, which is Saskatchewan, who had the week 1 bye. Let's say Calgary won that game by a score of 23-15. Again, thank you, CFL Stats Geek, for making up these possibilities so that we could all understand, how these playoff formats would work, or else we'd all be lost. But these are great. So let's say Calgary won that by a score of 23-15. Okay. Now we go to game 3, which would be in week 3. Sask now has to play BC, right? Each team plays each other once. So let's say Sask beats BC by a score of 30-10. Now we have developed here our 1 through 3 rankings, right? Sask is 1-1. Everyone's basically 1-1, right? So now it goes down to point differential, right? Because everyone has the same amount of points. Sask has a point differential of 12 because they lost to Saskatchewan 23-15, but they turned around and beat BC 30-10. So they're the highest seed. They have the best point differential at 12. Right behind them would be Calgary with 11, right? Based off their 3-point loss versus BC And then I think that would be an 8-point victory if my math serves me correct. It probably doesn't. My math has slacked in years previous. So that's how that would work there. You'd have basically Sask winning it all, and then obviously BC having a minus 17 point differential, and Sask advancing to the Grey Cup. Down to the bottom, again, I'll wrap up on kind of what I think at the end. But down at the bottom, we have what would be the East Division. You have Winnipeg crossing over as a 3 seed. Let's say they beat Montreal week 1, okay? Point differential doesn't really matter. Then they go in week 2, they play the number 1 seed, which would be Hamilton, and they beat Hamilton. They automatically advance, which I think that's the best way for that to happen, is that, hey, if you beat both teams, it shouldn't be a question on whether or not you should be in the Grey Cup. Where I feel like this playoff division has maybe loopholes, or I guess plot holes, if you want to call it that, I don't think the point differential will always be the best determination of the best team in the playoffs, right? Because let's say BC played Calgary in the first week, and let's say maybe Calgary just didn't show up that week, or they're coming off and maybe they lost their starting quarterback, have some injuries, and aren't where they need to be. Let's say they beat them by 40. It's going to be really hard for Saskatchewan, who's the number 1 seed, to put up 221, or basically a 20-point and a 21-point differential versus both of those teams. I guess it wouldn't have to be a 20, because you subtract that. Let's say they beat BC by 20. You subtract that 10 out of that 40-point differential, and now you're at 30. So it closes the gap a little bit. But I just think if there happens to be a blowout, it might let the team who's maybe not the best team advance to the playoffs. And again, I'd have to probably do a deeper dive on that. I love the format. I think it could work. I think there would just have to be a long sit down and maybe a plan on, exactly how, I guess, those playoff formats would work. But again, just to keep it with where the league's at with this, Johnson has said that the league has discussed playoff format at the winter meetings and referenced other leagues experimenting with formats. So he's also said that he's previously reviewing divisional playoff structure, and it's the type of thing he'd want to evaluate without obviously committing to a specific direction. But what formats do you think reward the regular season the most out of all of these ones? Let me know. And how would format changes affect preparation and travel, right? Because now you might have a West team having to travel out east and back, or having to stay out, right? Look at Winnipeg. They probably have to stay out east for 2 weeks if they wanted, to make it all the Grey Cup, which is already what they'd have to do anyways in a, I guess, crossover type scenario in today's, regular format. But again, those are interesting. But now let's run through that season stretch and the way we played and planned. Man, this was obviously coming off the Team Ted game. We're heading straight into the Edmonton game, which was, again, a competitive battle. This game came down to the very end, a game-winning field goal that set it off. But I think, it's all about what wins close games. It's whether it's execution or composure. I think it's definitely a combination of both. And then again, just the will to win as a team. But when I look back on sort of that Edmonton game, for me personally, coming out of Winnipeg, I just hurt my ankle again. So I had, not again, but just my other ankle, right? You guys had heard kind of the ankle injury I was dealing with earlier in the season, and then literally rolled my other ankle. This time not as bad, but again, anyone who's ever tweaked an ankle knows that is a painful injury to deal with. But in saying that, I didn't practice again all week. We're getting ready to play Edmonton. Obviously, we know they're a great team. They're hot right now with Cody Fajardo kind of at the helm, being a quarterback for them. And we just know we got to win this game. So that game was, again, I get to the facility or whatever for game day, and I'm trying to test out my ankle and see if we're ready to go again. We're taking some vitamins to make sure we're ready to play. A couple of painkillers and whatnot, and then letting the adrenaline do the rest. But that game was a tough one. It was a battle. My ankle hurt the entire game, even though it was taped up and all that sort of stuff. But again, I'm out there trying to battle for my guys. Where everyone else, and I think as a player in the grand scheme of things, when you look at injuries and going through that sort of stuff, everyone's going through it. Every single teammate that you have is going through it. I think that's what pushes you to kind of push through it, play through the pain, and then at the end of the day, when you do raise that trophy, you have that euphoric feeling or that sort of emotional feeling. I was like, man, look at all that we've come through to get to this point. So in saying that, that was a tough game. I actually had a crazy play in the end zone, which kind of I attribute to never giving up on any play. They basically, quarterback scrambles out, throws it to the receiver. He's kind of wide open, covering himself in the end zone. And I just didn't give up on the play. I, lowered my shoulder, tried to hit him as hard as I can. And the ball pops out. I see it pop out. I know it's an incomplete pass. They're celebrating. They think it's a touchdown. The referees come in. They wave. It's not a touchdown. Second down. We get off the field to kick a field goal. That creates, I think we were down by, or is a tie game or something. I can't remember exactly. So someone's going to have to fact check me on that. But all I know is our offense gets on the field, gave them a chance to get out there, do what they do. They drive the entire field, get us into field goal range, and then our kicker, Mark Leggio, game winner, no time on the clock. Time expires, we win the game. So that is a game I'll remember, and I'm sure TiCats fans will remember for a long time to come. And right after that, going on the highest of highs, we go into Winnipeg, and we get blown out on the road. I think it was about a 40-point bludgeoning, and I think we only scored 3 points, which, by the way, Legs kicked a 55-yard field goal that bounced off the crossbar and went in. But this was a tough game. Again, I'm hurting. I'm trying to pull it all together for the boys out there. This is a funny story, but I actually, on the first field goal, our first PAT, because Winnipeg scored on a kickoff return, first play of the game. I'm not technically supposed to be out there, obviously, because I am hurt, and I can't return at this point. Like, that's not my forte, but I can. I always try to do everything I can. I catch footballs, from the kickers in practice, so I'm always ready to go just in case your number's called. And I kind of just notice, in the fog of war of football, sometimes, you'll be standing on the sideline and not realize you're supposed to be out on the field. And I just noticed our returners are not out there. I'm like, okay, well, someone's got to go out there. So we have, 12 guys on the field. And, just in case this ball does need to be returned, we can return it. So I, stumble out there. I'm like, he's not going to miss it. And little do I know, the PAT gets missed. And as it's in there, I'm like, oh, crap. Like, I got to return this. My ankles are not anywhere near where they need to be to try to return this and make a play out of this. In all that moment, I forget that I could probably just take a knee and, there's no points against or anything like that. Again, this just shows how sometimes football minds can just go, any which way or direction. So I catch the ball, immediately think like, oh, I got to return this. I got to try to, do something with this ball. And then I kind of notice, I don't know if I really have the ability to get out of the end zone. I'm trying to remember, it's like, can I take it out of the end zone, or do I need to, and I know this rule personally, but just, again, with everything going on, the high stakes, I'm just thinking, okay, just get it out of the end zone at this point so you don't give up a point, which is the rouge in the CFL game. So I went to go make a break on my ankle. That is the most painful one. And I'm just like, oh gosh, like I can't really plan on that. So then I'm like, I just dive out of the end zone, get out of there. I try to dive out of the end zone, get blown up. I think I kind of fumbled the ball, maybe. I think they called it down. But yeah, that was the funny story from that game. But we ended up getting beat pretty bad. There was a tough way to win, or tough way to lose, against obviously a good football team. But we move on from that one. We go to the Toronto game, which was, again, a very fun game for us, a big bounce back game, rivalry game, the Ballard Cup, all that great stuff that comes with the QEW rivalry. And it was a huge win for us. I had a 3-pick game, which is kind of unheard of in any pro sports, let alone, university, college. I think anytime you have 3 picks, like scoring 3 touchdowns. It just doesn't happen very often. So was super grateful from that. Obviously, it was a big film game study for me. I actually dropped the first pick of the game, first play of the game. I made a read, went to go pick it off, and just I don't know how I didn't catch it, but I didn't. So from there, I was like, oh man, I literally had my opportunity. I missed it, and then I didn't even have an idea of that I would have 3 picks, or at least one again, and another opportunity, let alone 3 of them, and make a play on all 3. But that was an awesome game to be a part of. Everyone kind of balled that game. We won that game, moved on to Calgary again, and literally it was like we would win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. And then Calgary comes right up. We lose that game. And I'm just like, dude, what's going on? What are we doing? I didn't have the best game that game. I don't think anyone did on our team the way we won. But we had to wake up. It was at home. We could have sealed the East final playoff game in that one. We didn't. So now it comes down to the final game of the season. We're playing Ottawa. It is at home. We have to win if we want, the chance to hold on to first, because we know Montreal's right on our heels. They have a chance to win a game and go one up on us. And we did what we needed to do. We won that game. We were chasing the playoffs. We knew what mattered. We knew it was at stake. And, my guy Reggie Stubblefield gets a pick. Deshaun Amos gets a pick. Braxton Hill gets a pick. It's literally like everyone who wants a pick that game got one. It was a pick party. Jamal Peters gets a pick. We tie for 6 interceptions, league leaders in that category, which was awesome to see. All your guys kind of stat up in that game and make big plays. But that's kind of how the season wrapped up. In the next episode, we'll obviously recap the East Final, talk a little bit about Grey Cup and my experience there. And yeah, again, that was just great. But let's close it out with our quick hit segment. We obviously have, some cool re-signings that happened and some new signings that happened kind of in this last kind of week. The most notable for me is our offensive lineman, Jacob Zott, or Jakub Zott. I know his family would probably not be happy if I didn't pronounce his name correctly. But my guy Zotter, re-signing him, I think, was an awesome, depth piece for us. The guy can play. He is a mean dude out there. Will hit anything that walks. Local kid as well. So always great having, those kids that grew up in the backyard playing for, probably when they were kids didn't know that they were going to be playing for that organization, but always dreamed of it one day. So it's great to see that. And he obviously has a high ceiling, and the stability in that type of move is great to see. For the Hamilton fans out there, what do you think Hamilton needs more of? Do you think we need more explosive playmakers? Do we need more depth in the trenches? Let me know kind of in the comments what you put your GM cap on for a second and let me know what you guys think. Another quick hit too is some NFL futures deals getting done. My former teammate, Nikola Kalinic, awesome to see him signing an NFL future deal and keeping up with the Chicago Bears after the season that they just had, unfortunately exiting the playoffs. But again, always good to see Canadians who deserve it getting opportunities at the next level. And then some more NFL news. We got basically our quick hit 4 and quick hit 5. Number 4 is our former TiCat, my teammate Jose Ramirez, getting an NFL shot with the Philadelphia Eagles. He came into our team a little bit late in the last season, but was on the roster right away, making plays. Former, I think, second-round NFL draft pick. So again, we knew we wouldn't be able to keep him very long, with that type of caliber and the type of playmaker that he is. But again, another guy that just showed up daily and put in the work. And then these are my favorites, right? Again, more Canadian guys, more guys on our team that have put in the work and get in the notoriety they deserve, right? We got obviously Devin Verasuk, who was a rookie, our first-round draft pick in last year's draft, getting a futures opportunity with, I believe it was the Colts, if I'm not mistaken. But again, pretty unheard of for a rookie linebacker. With the amount of games that he played this year, obviously he wasn't a starter right out of the gate. But again, just shows the type of player that he is, and I'm excited for him. Hoping, we always say obviously you want to have these guys back, but I'm hoping that he sticks down there for the rest of his career and gets to enjoy that. Another one, Nick Constantino, punter. Getting a shot with the Cleveland Browns, and my guy Isaiah Wooden also getting a shot with the Cleveland Browns futures deals. Wishing the best for them as they take on OTAs, training camp, all that sort of stuff. Just hoping they stick down there and make the most of their opportunities. So yeah, that's probably the most guys I've seen, at least in my career in the CFL, sign futures deals in the NFL, which is again just great to see that. Sort of Hamilton TiCats to the NFL pipeline. And again, just hoping those guys stick. Wishing them nothing but the best. But that's where we kind of close out here. Again, drop your playoff format idea. I know that's probably the biggest thing right now in the comments. And we'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace.